Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, and we are doing breaches of the week. And as you can hear from my voice, I am definitely under the weather, so please bear with me here as I'm going to get through this. But we have a lot of data breaches to cover this week, and with that, as always, we're going to start with the people that sent these in, and there are a lot of new faces, or names I should say, for this. So with that, thank you very much. Barrett Peterson, Mark Fuller, Brian Erickson, Stephanie Trump, who I assume has no relation to that Trump or any of the Trumps. And again, Stephanie, please correct me if I'm wrong. I was just an eyebrow raising when I got that, but thank you for your email. Also, Juba Bamako, interestingly enough, Bamako is the capital of Mali, so I'm wondering if there's any relation there. Now, that said, let's dive right in because we have an absolute ton to cover, and we are going to start here in the United States with two gun shops. That would be Rainier Arms and Numrich Gun Parts. Apparently, credit card skimmers were installed on their respective websites. So rainierarms.com basically found a card skimmer on April 21st of this year and determined that it had been harvesting credit cards since June 1st of last year through January 19th of this year. So if you've used rainierarms.com for all your firearm shopping needs, you definitely want to check in. Now, the other one is gunpartscorp.com. They found an investigation that the skimmer basically had been there since January 23rd of this year through April 5th, and obviously basically got that excised. So if you use rainierarms.com or gunpartscorp.com, heads up to you. There you go. Moving on. Let's talk about the Italian city of Palermo because the Vice Society ransomware gang has claimed responsibility for a recent cyber attack on Palermo, which caused a large-scale service outage for that government and its citizens. Now, this attack occurred a week ago Friday, and all internet-relying services remained unavailable, impacting 1.3 million people and many tourists that visit the city. Italy, obviously a very popular tourist destination spot, so heads up to you. If you're traveling to the city of Palermo, if you live there, you probably know about this already. Moving on, let's talk about the Shields healthcare group out of Boston. They provide imaging and ambulatory surgical services to dozens of locations around Massachusetts. They may have been compromised, and the personal information of up to 2 million people may have been exposed. Now, according to a notice on their website this past Tuesday, we're talking names, social security numbers, dates of birth, and medical or treatment details is among the information that may have been compromised. It looks like somebody gained access to their systems between March 7th through March 21st of this year, and that's about all we know thus far. So if you've taken an ambulance provided by Shields Healthcare Group out of Boston, you might want to check in. Moving on, let's talk about the Ian Martin Group. I'm not sure what they do, but they reported a breach after an unauthorized party was able to access sensitive information off of their company's server. Now, according to them, the breach resulted in names and social security numbers of 15,351 individuals being compromised, and on June 2nd of this year, they filed an official notice. So heads up, if you use Ian Martin or Ian Martin for whatever they do. Moving on, let's talk about business lending company On Deck. They announced that they experienced a data breach after an unauthorized party gained access to their computer network and basically transferred out customer-sensitive information. We're talking names, social security numbers, tax ID, driver's license numbers, passports, financial and account payment card numbers, and medical or health insurance information being compromised. So if you have anything to do with On Deck, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about the Pyramid Consulting Group. They confirmed they got a data breach as well. We're talking names, social security numbers for up to 3,264 individuals being compromised, and basically we learned of this on June 3rd. So there you go. If you have anything to do with PCG or Pyramid Consulting Group, you know what to do. Also, BioLays Inc. in Foothill Ranch, California. Apparently on December 29th of last year, they identified unusual activity on their network. They began an investigation that essentially somebody had removed certain files from their network between December 21st through the 29th. And we are talking name, social security, driver's license, financial information such as account numbers, credit or debit cards, and health insurance information. So BioLays Inc., employees or customers or patients, heads up. Moving on, let's head on over to Nigeria and talk about one of their banks called BetNaija. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. The Nigerian Data Protection Bureau has basically commenced investigations into reports of the alleged breach of data privacy by Wema Bank PLC and KC Gaming Network, collectively known as BetNaija. Sometime in May of this year, customers of Wema Bank complained of a breach that their rights to data privacy and protection had been violated by the bank. This data processing, according to complaints against the bank, involved using their personal data to open accounts. The the Data Protection Bureau in Nigeria is also investigating a report of a breach of privacy at KC Gaming's network, and that breach is basically involved in an external attack. Apparently, this is ongoing, but Nigeria, we like to make fun of, in terms of the Nigerian prince email scams. Obviously, they have their own cybersecurity issues as well. And there you go. So hopefully that'll get cleaned up very nicely and very quickly. Moving on, let's talk about eye care leaders. They offer ophthalmology-specific EMR solutions, and basically they got hit in December of 2021. This is a supply chain hit, so eye care practices all over are now disclosing. And so far, there are 16 known organizations and upwards of 583,700 individuals that are now involved. We are talking about the ones that have disclosed right now. So Evergreen Health for 21,000 people, Arkfield Parson and Goldstein PC doing business as Illumin, that's 14,984 individuals, Northern Eye Care Associates for 8,000, Ad Astra Eye for 3,700, Regional Eye Associates for 194,035, Moyes Eye Center for 38,000 individuals, Berman and Zuckerbrod or Broad Ophthalmology Associates for 1,337, Shoreline Eye Care Group or Shoreline Eye Group for 57,047, Finkelstein Eye Associates 58,587, Sylvester Eye Care 19,377, Associated Ophthalmologists of Kansas City, obviously in Kansas City, 13,461, Fishman Vision 2,646, and AU Health 50,631. That's what we know so far. Obviously, we're talking about a lot of people affected, and so you might want to check in with your eye care provider if they're using this. You may be caught up in this. They just haven't disclosed yet, and we all have an ophthalmologist in our life, myself included. Moving on, let's talk about fintech company Lower LLC. They confirmed a data breach after an unauthorized party gained access to their computer network and removed files relating to consumer data. We're talking names, social security numbers, dates of birth, driver's license, financial account numbers, and this happened basically earlier this year. On May 27, they sent out breach notification letters, so heads up to you if you use Lower LLC for whatever they do. Moving on, let's talk about Comstar Ambulance Service. They confirmed an unauthorized party gained access to their network and affected 69,005 people. We are also talking names, dates of birth, driver's license, social security, financial account information, and more of those affected individuals. So if you've gotten an ambulance from Comstar, check in. Moving on, let's talk about the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center, formerly known as the Seattle Cancer Care Alliance. They got hit, and it looks like basically sensitive consumer data was hit as well. We don't know what's going on thus far, and meaning they have not fully disclosed, but they have disclosed that they've been hit. So heads up to you if you're a patient or employee at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center, formerly known as the Seattle Cancer Care Alliance, or if you're a former employee or patient, you may also be caught up in this as well. Moving on, let's talk about Advice One LLC. They also reported a data breach, basically 7,800 individuals impacted. We're talking names, dates of birth, social security numbers, driver's license, bank account information, usernames, passwords, all that kind of stuff. They filed a notice on May 25th of this year. Moving on, let's talk about Prothena Corporation. This has been a long week. Unfortunately, I'm sick this week, so it couldn't have been a short one. It really couldn't have, huh? So Prothena Corporation, they confirmed they had a data breach as well. Basically, business email compromise, an employee's email account was hit. According to the breach, we don't know the numbers, but we're talking names, addresses, social security, or tax ID numbers, and on June 2nd, they notified the world. Moving on, Texas Gulf Bank also confirmed that they got hit when two of their employee email accounts basically were hit on two separate occasions, and attackers gained access. Now, according to Texas Gulf Bank, or TGB, the breach resulted in names, bank account numbers, and credit or debit card numbers being compromised. So if you use Texas Gulf Bank, definitely check in. Moving on, let's talk about Private Client Services, LLC. They confirmed that they had a data breach, basically, again, through an employee email account. I mean, compromise. Why isn't everybody enabling multi-factor authentication? Just the basic one at this point while you're planning for a better identity management service. My God, there's a ton of these this week. Now, according to PCS, Private Client Services, we're talking names, social security numbers, driver's license numbers, state IDs that may have been compromised. 22,554 individuals are caught up in this. Moving on, let's talk about Aon. Yes, the large Aon, they confirmed that they experienced a data breach. Basically, somebody had unauthorized access to their computer infrastructure for more than a year. This is what's called basically advanced persistent threat, or APT. They gain a foothold. They don't do anything. They are investigating, running surveillance, slowly stealing things, etc., and oftentimes are not caught for quite some time. Now, according to Aon, the breach resulted in names, social security numbers, driver's license numbers, and benefit enrollment information being compromised. Now, on May 27th, Aon filed an official notice of breach, sent out breach letters, and apparently 31,799 of their customers essentially were involved. So look out if you use Aon for that letter. If you didn't get one, you might still want to check in to ensure that you weren't one of those almost 32,000 of their customers, and they obviously have a zillion customers, so hopefully it is contained to that small number, even though that is obviously a large number, and there you are. And finally, and we've got a couple finalies for you this week, I want to talk about first the State of the Union for cloud security, because some disturbing numbers have just come to light. This is coming from SC Magazine, and I think this is something that's kind of important. We all need to understand this as we adopt all of these cloud infrastructures into our life. Now, here's what's going on. Thales this past Tuesday reported that 45%, almost half of all businesses that it surveyed, have experienced a cloud-based data breach or failed an audit in the past 12 months, and that is up from 5% from the previous year. Now, this new report, which was conducted basically by 451 Research on their behalf, also found that there's been a notable expansion in the use of multiple infrastructure as a service providers, with almost 3/4 or 72% of businesses using multiple infrastructure as a service providers, and that is up from 57% from the year before, meaning we are moving more and more and more to the cloud. Obviously, the pandemic dropped a supercharger in that, but last year was 2021, not 2020, so it is still accelerating. Now, also, the use of multiple providers has almost doubled in the last year, with 1 in 5, exactly 20%, according to the research, of respondents reporting using 3 or more providers. Now, despite the shift to the cloud, many businesses share common concerns about the increasing complexity of cloud services. Basically, 51% of IT professionals agree that it's more complex to manage privacy and data protection in the cloud. And that is true. We audit the cloud like AWS, Amazon's AWS, Azure, etc., for customers that come to us and say, we need a cloud audit. And quite frankly, we have yet to find one that has fully passed, the audit. There's always things to do. They give you a ton of granular security controls, and oftentimes you don't have certified people migrating you to the cloud, and you just simply end up missing security controls that end up being critical, whether it's to defend you or basically for us to run forensics on the back end if you do have an incident and have to enable incident response. So this is obviously a huge thing. Now, on top of this, additionally, the journey to the cloud has also become more complex, with the percentage of respondents reporting that a simple quote-unquote lift and shift migration tactic has dropped from 55% in 2021 to 24% today, meaning you're essentially copying and pasting to the cloud and off you go. The cloud is becoming more complex than a standard server in your office, and there you go. That's adding to the frustration. Now, cloud services are obviously very easy to acquire. They're made as easy as possible, and many employees end up signing up for free services that the IT team doesn't know that they're using for business purposes, and that's the other huge part of this. And that is shadow IT. It really behooves, it really behooves every business to essentially understand the application traffic that is coming in and out of their office or from their devices that are remote, meaning you've given that employee a laptop to work from home, and he or she decides, you know what, I just need to sync this to my home computer or my other device or whatever, and so they go ahead and sign up for like the free Dropbox or something. Now you've got a potential data exfiltration risk. Now you've got a data loss prevention risk. These are things that we really have to understand as we're running businesses, that we need to keep a good handle on this. I literally just came back from speaking a few days ago at IT Nation Secure, where essentially I did an entire presentation on shadow IT, and it really does start with good asset management. Asset management obviously being a quantification and understanding not just of the hardware that you own, but the software as well, and then having visibility into both to make sure that, one, things are being updated, nothing's expiring, all those things, but also it gives you an understanding if, let's say I as an employee decide to add Dropbox to my laptop, as I'm working from home, now your IT team or your cybersecurity team has the insight to say, hey, wait a second, Nick is attempting to do something that he shouldn't do, and hopefully there are policies that would prevent me, the regular employee that doesn't have elevated access, from installing whatever I want. So obviously this is a huge problem. That is the state of the union of the cloud. And now I want to move to our last finally, which is a state of the union of our own personal security. These numbers are staggering. This is also coming from a separate article from SC Magazine, but I thought this would be a good way to dovetail it. We're seeing cloud breaches, but we here in the United States and around the world are having some huge issues. Now, here's what's going on. And we're going to start in the United States, as this article is basically U.S. focused, but here we go. U.S. citizens face the greatest number of cyber threats as compared with people in other nations worldwide, according to a recent study by IT security company known as Surfshark. I cannot speak today. I apologize. Surfshark. Now, after reviewing nearly 2 decades of data regarding cyber incidents, Surfshark found that the average American has been affected by at least 7 data breaches since 2004, meaning in 18 years, because we're in 2022, basically, if you're sitting in the United States, on average, you have experienced 7 data breaches of your personal information. If you're on LinkedIn, you've had a data breach. If you're on Facebook, you've had a data breach, and on and on and on. Now, U.S. citizens have faced an estimated 2.3 billion account compromises. Russia comes in second place with 2.2 billion accounts of cyber attacks, followed in third by China, then Germany, then France. Quote, on a global scale, 191 accounts are breached per 100 people on average here in the United States. And that's according to a data researcher at Surfshark, Agnieszka Seblovskaja. And I, again, apologize for butchering your last name, Agnieszka. So with that, quote, however, in the U.S., the number goes up to 694 per 100 people. Statistically speaking, a single American person has around 7 instances in which they were victims of data breaches. Now, the scale of breached accounts is, quote, so massive, it makes up around 15% of all breached users globally, again, according to Surfshark, meaning the United States, basically the American citizens, account for 15% of all data breaches in the entire world. Obviously, our population is something like 3 or 4% of the entire world, so that is a huge, huge number. Quote, statistically, every U.S. internet user has lost 27 data points on average to online breaches, most of them emails, passwords, and usernames, end quote. Now, more than 2/3 of American accounts are leaked with basic password access, putting 72% of breached users in danger of account takeover that might lead to identity theft, extortion, or other cyber crimes. Again, we have a huge problem with the general population not understanding what multi-factor authentication is. And a few years ago, I've used this stat before, Pew did a research and basically put a panel of 4 different pictures in front of a person and said, hey, which one is multi-factor authentication? 89% of the population could not identify out of basically these 4 pictures which one was multi-factor authentication. That is a huge problem that we have. Education in cybersecurity here in this country, and I'm sure it's the same issue around the world. Now, to continue, the study is based on the data from reviewing 27,000 leaked databases. U.S. citizens have faced more breach accounts per capita than any other country since early 2020. A combined sum of 8.7 billion American last names, IP addresses, first names, passwords, usernames, and other data has been sold or leaked online since 2004. And again, that's what they could find. Obviously, those numbers could be low. They probably are. In fact, I'm willing to bet. However, there may be light at the end of this tunnel, though. In terms of breach rate, the U.S. statistics, again, 694 breaches per 100 people, look more positive than Russia's current attack rate. Russian citizens face 1,489 breaches per every 100 people. That's almost 15 times, quote, meaning that there is virtually no chance to not be subject to some sort of cybercrime if you live in Russia. Essentially, if you're in the borders of Russia, you've been hacked. It's pretty much guaranteed, meaning the size of our population here in the United States is keeping this number down per person, even though we are number 1 in overall breaches. And there you go. So, which makes us number 1, Russia number 2. Now, for example, China, which is in 3rd place in terms of total breaches, rates 69 breaches per 100 citizens, and that is due to their absolutely massive population. They're like 1.3 billion, 1.4 billion to the United States is, I think we're around 350 million at this point. That's what's keeping that number low. But obviously, if we're talking about just straight up breaches per company, we are still number 1. Now, there is little doubt that the breaches overall are on the rise. In the first quarter of 2022, 304 global accounts were breached every single minute. That is absolutely nuts. Now, also, in the second quarter of 2022, the breach rate is 6.7% higher. However, there is a slight positive note here. The trend in the United States is running contrary at the moment to the worldwide trend. The U.S. breach rate is basically 33% lower when comparing it to the second quarter of this year to last year, falling from 18 to 12 breached accounts per minute. So we're looking at basically 12 breached accounts per minute right now, 304 breached accounts globally per minute. It's absolutely nuts out there. This is why we need good cyber security. This is why we need good cyber education. Those were your breaches of the week. I'm going back to bed, but I wanted to get this done. The show must go on. Were you affected? You absolutely were. I just gave you the numbers. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, attempt to stay private, and please stay healthy. Thanks, everyone.